All right, this house in Everett, Washington is listed at $550,000, and we're going to walk through a real mortgage quote to talk about how much your monthly payment would be on this house. Now, I know that when you're coming into the mortgage process, it's super confusing, and you just don't know what to expect until you get deep into it, and it would be nice to get some realistic expectations early on in the process. A little bit more realistic and reliable, hopefully, than just a mortgage calculator online. So that's what the goal of this video is. I'm going to give you actually a real mortgage quote that is going to show you some reliable numbers on what to expect. We'll walk through two different quotes. We'll walk through two different scenarios on this house. We'll look at one where you are putting 5% down and one where you're putting 20% down on the house. And then in each quote, I will walk through what your monthly payment would be. I'll show you how much cash you would need to bring all in with your closing costs plus your down payment. And then I'll also show you how much income you would need to be making in order to qualify for this loan. My name is Landon Buto. I work with Cleveland Street Mortgage, a mortgage broker based in Bothell, Washington. This is a real quote that we'll be pulling on this house. So these will be really reliable numbers, accurate numbers, up-to-date numbers. That doesn't mean it's going to be exactly what you could expect. I'm not advertising any of this interest rate or any of that, but it should give you a reliable sense of what to expect. And then when you get deeper in the process, hopefully your expectations early on will line up more with what you end up seeing realistically. So here's the quote, and as you can see here, there are the two quotes. There's one on the right, that's the 5% down scenario, and on the left is the 20% down scenario. And for both of these, I'm assuming a credit score of 740. So just so you know what assumptions I'm making coming in. Let's walk through the numbers here. So let's start by walking through the 5% down scenario, and then I'll show you how the numbers change when we come back and look at the 20% down scenario. So 5% down scenario, your monthly payment is $4,132. And that's actually super exciting because this morning interest rates dropped just a little bit, improved just a little bit for the first time in a while. So you'll see what interest rate, which is still, relative to 2 years ago, still high, but we'll look at that in just a second. There are 4 different components of this monthly payment. One of those is homeowners insurance. I'm estimating homeowners insurance of $125 per month. Now that is an estimate, and that will vary. It will vary depending on who your insurance provider is and what your coverage is, but that should be a pretty reliable estimate. It should give you a good sense of what to expect. That's a pretty common number that we see for this area, for this price point of a house. Taxes of $365 per month. And taxes are, that number is actually drawn from the county website for this property for 2024, so that is the actual number that you can expect on this property. Mortgage insurance of $122 per month. Mortgage insurance is something you have to pay if you put less than 20% down. That's going to vary depending on several factors, but it could be anywhere from $30 a month to $300 per month. But the main factors are your credit score and how big your loan amount is. And then principal and interest of $3,520. That is based on our loan amount here of $522,000, and then our interest rate of 7.125. So it's been right around 7.4 recently, so we're back down to 7.125 this morning, which is great. Again, this is not an advertisement. That's going to depend on several factors. Not guaranteed this rate. Even today, I'm making this video May 3rd, and so that's not guaranteed, but it is a good idea of what to expect of where we're at. And so what that means is total cash to close. So we have other closing costs down here of $12,000. When you come to get a loan, you need to remember you have to pay closing costs. And just as a range of a ballpark, in the greater Seattle area, most houses in the greater Seattle area, typical loan amount, common loan amounts, you're going to be probably somewhere from $10,000 to $15,000. So right now we're showing $12,000 in closing costs. So $12,000 of closing costs plus our down payment of 5% means in order to close on this house, you have to bring $41,395 to escrow. Again, an estimate, but based on real numbers. It will vary depending on several factors, on when in the month you buy it, on how much your appraisal costs, how much your inspection costs, how much, different fees like that, how much your title and escrow fee is. So it'll vary depending on that as far as closing costs, but our down payment plus our cash to close in this scenario will be somewhere in this ballpark of $40,000 to $50,000. All right, now let's walk through the 20% down scenario, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about how much income would it take in order to get approval for this loan in each scenario. 20% down, your monthly payment has dropped down to $34.54. We're below $3,500, which is awesome for this price point. It's been a while before I've been able to quote something below $3,500. Now that we are back, a couple basis points below where we've been at as far as interest rates. Now we only have three components here. Homeowners insurance, taxes, those are both the same. We no longer have mortgage insurance because we are now at 20%. When you hit 20% down, you do not have to pay mortgage insurance. So homeowners insurance, taxes, those are both the same because they're dependent on the house. They're not dependent on the loan structure. Principal and interest of $29.64. Loan amount of $440,000 now, and interest rate of, again, 7.125. Sometimes if you go from 5% down to 20% down, you might see an improvement in interest rate. Not always, though, and in this case, it did not happen. And then other closing costs in this case of $11,784, and that is slightly lower because we have a smaller loan amount. And part of your closing costs are dependent on are impacted by what your loan amount is. So other closing costs of $11,784 now. Those plus these closing costs plus your down payment of 20%. Now you have to bring $123,000 to the closing table in order to get this house. So let's talk about how much income it would take to qualify for this loan. How much would you need to be making in order for a lender to approve you for this loan? Now, before I get into this, I'll get into it very quickly, but just a quick note, I'm not talking about affordability. I'm not talking about how much of a monthly payment you should take on if you're making X amount in income. It's not financial advice in any way like that. It's just factual. If you came to the lender, would they approve you? Could you take on the loan? Could you get approval for the loan based on X amount of income? That's what I'm talking about. And the way that is determined for conventional loans, which is what we're looking at right now, is they use your DTI, which is your debt to income ratio. And your DTI is your total monthly debts divided by your gross monthly income. And this income has to qualify in the lender's eyes, so it's different for salary versus commission, or if you're self-employed or if you work variable hours. The way that lenders determine whether they can use your income at all, whether they can include it in this number, it varies depending on what your pay structure is, so just keep that in mind. But if they do count it, then the way they use it is they take your total monthly debts and divide it by your gross monthly income, and that number needs to be less than 50% in order to qualify for the loan under conventional. If it's less than 50%, typically the lender will approve you for the loan. So if that's the case, so real quick, your total monthly debts is your new housing payment, this new payment that would result from your loan, plus any other monthly debts you have. So if you have other debts, if you have student loan debts or car debts or credit card, you add all of those debts, other debts you have, plus this new housing payment together, and then you divide it by your gross monthly income. So basically, it needs to be all of your debts times 2 is what income you'd need to be making in order to qualify for the loan. So in this case, on the 20% down scenario, it's going to be less than the 5% down scenario because this is a much larger monthly payment you'd have to qualify for. So in the 20% down scenario, what is that? 6,908. And then over here in the 5% down scenario, it's 8,264. and that's per month. So I'm going to check that, make sure I got that right, and then I'll also show you how much that will be annually. All right, excellent. I got that right. My mental math is improving doing these videos. So $82,896 per year is what this would be for the 20% down scenario, and $99,168 per year. So again, this is each and every one of these numbers is going to be different depending on the day you come to get the loan, depending on what your credit score is, depending on how long you've had your job, depending on so many different factors. So these numbers are real, but they're real based on certain assumptions about the borrower who's coming to get this loan. So just bear that in mind. These are real numbers, but they will vary depending on how many of these assumptions are accurate to you. But this is how it works. You'd need $82,000 per year, a little over $82,000 per year of usable income in order to qualify for this 20% down scenario based on today's rates and this purchase price. You'd need basically $100,000 per year in order to qualify for this loan of usable income. Remember, if the lender deems it usable in order to qualify for this loan. I hope that's helpful. If you want to get a real quote on a house that you are looking at based on assumptions that are accurate to you, we'd love to do a quote for you, so please do reach out. Any of our contact information is in the description below, or if you just want to ask questions, feel free to put those in the comments or reach out using any of our contact information down below. There's also a video and links there so you can see what it's like to work with our team, see what our process is like. Again, we're based in Bothell, Washington. We do loans all over Washington and Idaho, so we'd love to work with you. Please do reach out.